Now, it takes between 6 and 8 weeks to send something. And the problem of sending things from America to Zambia, it's very expensive with weight. And a small package of, say, 20 pounds will cost about $200 US to send it. So it's very expensive. But we've had good success. This is John Brower right here, my co-worker. And he's in front of the post office. And this is a very common thing all the time. It's called the open market. We have a big one in our town. This is where most of Zambians shop. They don't shop in the grocery store downtown. They go down and barter. That means you go down and talk about what the price is. A lot of times they'll have it labeled. And you know that it's fair because they deal with Zambians all the time. This is a very common sight. See this young lady right here? They'll put a pad on their head. They carry very heavy loads. This is 25 kilos, which is about 55 pounds. And she carries that. That's a whole bag of meaty meal on the top of her head. And what's very common is this is called a shatanga. See these right here? And what my wife has on, and what this is right here, that's a shatanga. This was made out of cloth. A lot of ladies wear this on the bottom. A lot of ladies carry around little babies. Unfortunately, in our town, there is a lot of immorality. And a lot of the babies that mothers carry around, they're not married. And they can have 1 or 2 children and not be married. But that's a very common sight that you see. They're small ladies. I just wonder how strong they really are. We're so very fortunate to have a pretty good store in Choma. We found out that when we went out to the field for the first time in 2007, that store had just been put in. And ordinarily, when we buy groceries, we go every 8 weeks down to the capital, which is about 180 miles away in U.S. Mileage. And it takes us about 4 hours, and we buy between 6 to 8 weeks of groceries and things and come back. And we have a freezer and we keep it. But we do have a nice little store downtown. Made good friends with these dear, dear girls and friends. This here is Edith. She's a mommy. She's married, has 2 children. This is a wonderful single girl. Her name's Charity. A lot of these people take biblical names. Charity is the Greek word for love. Charity works in the bakery. They make fresh bread every day. All that they make is fresh. This was a young lady I got to become good friends with, and her name was Annette. She was the assistant manager of this grocery store. And she's been really nice because she's been helpful in hiring some of our friends to work there. We have a young lady that was from our church that she was able to hire. You go there, one of the things you buy is Coke. You buy it in small bottles. And this is Godfrey. He's the manager of the Coke station. You go in and buy a whole case of it, of the bottles, 24. This is Rachel. And Rachel invited Marianne and I to her wedding. She was going to get married 2 weeks after we left Zambia in December. We missed her wedding. She's now married. This is one of my friends. One of the things you see in Zambia, as well as I saw in Kenya, most of the businessmen in Zambia and in our town are not Zambian men. They're Indians. They're Zambians, but they're Indians. They're the businessmen. They control a lot of the business downtown. This is just a walk to a nearby village. Some of our people come from this village right here, Kamunza. And this is where really poor people live. Poor is that they have mud brick houses, thatched roofs. And when you go out to see them, these dear kids, I've gone out many times. Many times I've gone out to the village and just walked through, made friends. And first time some of these kids have ever seen a white person.
Yeah, they're asking, does it rain there?
Yes, it rains a great deal. It rains from November, December, January, February, March. And it rains so much harder than you can imagine here, okay? When it rains, it pours. And when the rain comes off of my roof, okay, it looks like I have a waterfall coming off the roof. A waterfall, okay? And one of the things that we find in our country, it never gets below 40 degrees. And so the Zambians could walk out in the rain and they get sopping wet and they don't get sick because it's not cold. I tell them, if you were living where I live right now, when it starts raining in December, January, February, do you think they could walk out in the rain, get sopping wet? No, they'd die because they'd freeze to death.
Rose was asking, does the rain go through the grass roof?
No, it's amazing how well the grass roofs do. They make it real, real thick sometimes. And it does quite well. Okay? Now, where our church is located, we are in a part of town, Grace Baptist Church is showground, and a certain part of the inside of the town, it's middle class Zambians. The village is poor people, which makes up about 95% of the community. 95% of the community is very poor. If you come into town in certain areas, if you're doing a little better, you'll have a block house. The blocks are not made out of mud or termite mounds. They're made out of cement. They usually have a cement floor and an aluminum roof. And most of these towns in this area have access to electricity. See the electricity wires up here? And they have access to underground water. This house here is out in the country. This is one of our farmers, Osiah and his wife, Nacy. And they do not have any water or electricity, but they do have a block house. This block house was built by our missionaries for our farm workers. And here I went out and visited some family. This is the #1 washing machine in Zambia. Ladies do a lot of their washing by hand, most of it out in the villages. Okay?
And Ancho was saying that's a lot of hard work.
Yeah. In Zambia, our country, it's sad. We have an 80% infection rate with AIDS. 80%. A lot of people die young. The average life expectancy of a woman is 36. The life expectancy of a man is 36. So people do not live long. Many, many people die because of the complications of AIDS, and many of them die because of malaria.
Ancho was asking why so many people have AIDS. What's wrong?
Because there's a lot of immorality. And people are born with it. As I go back to Zambia, I'm going to be working with an orphanage as a Rotarian. And the orphanage is made up of 127 orphans, and all their parents have died. So it's much more serious. When I was in America, before I went to Zambia, I was saying on the stats that I had to the churches that Zambia was 40% infected with AIDS. And that just, it's so much higher than that. Part of the problem is access to medication and help. They just don't have it. They don't have the money to buy it. Most of these Zambians don't have enough money to buy medicine for malaria. More or less the other things they need. Here downtown, we see a lot of people doing little piecework. These men here are selling agricultural tools. A lot of times they'll take this tool out and they don't pull it by an animal. Well, some do if they have oxen. A lot of them will pull it by hand. Get somebody out in front of it and a human will pull it. A lot of people do piecework. This was one of our workers in our home the first year we were there, Daniel, and he did a lot of hard work, slashing. They call it piecework. A lot of shops down in the open market, girls that are selling clothes. A lot of these clothes, I'm not quite sure where they get them all. A lot of them are used. We're not quite sure where they buy them and get them. This is a fine young lady. She's our helper. She works with us. She works for us. And Estelle, her husband has died. She's a widow. She has her family to raise. And she does work. I think one of the most difficult things for people in our church, you talk about unemployment here in our country, 10% or whatever, 18%. In my town, it's probably 85% unemployment. And the problem is we just simply don't have jobs. And what's really hard is for the young people, if you get sponsored and have someone pay for your education, you can go up through grammar school, junior high, and high school. Okay? Because in Zambia, you have to pay for your education. It's not free like in America. But even with the young people, we have young people in our church that are very, very smart. They've graduated from a special school. They have a 12-year degree, and there are not any jobs in our town for them to get. And what it's forcing a lot of our people to do is move to the bigger cities, either down to Livingston or to Lusaka, because it's very difficult to make a living there because there just isn't anything to do. And the whole thing is so much different than here and in America. As our country grew from the beginning, the infrastructure of different businessmen and women who thought of things to invent, and we grew together in our economy. We are prosperous because we've been working in an economy for 300 years. And the infrastructure of Zambia is not there. There is no infrastructure. Most of what they get, they import. They manufacture so little of what they have. And their conditions there, it's very difficult. We don't exactly know what to do about it. And what the future is going to be, just trusting the Lord. That's why they have a very difficult time earning enough money to take care of themselves. It's very difficult. One of the things a lot of people do is they make bricks. They make bricks for houses, fences. And one of the things they do is that we have these termites in Africa all over the place, and they come out and they build these huge mounds. Now, when I was in Kenya, I saw ones that were kind of pointed. They weren't that big. They were kind of reddish. Boy, over there, these mounds come out of the ground, and they're huge. They might be 50 feet across and 25 feet high. I don't know how the little termites make such big mounds, but what the Zambians have found is that dirt that's been processed by the termites makes excellent bricks. And so a lot of times they'll be next to a big termite hill. They'll dig the termite hill apart. They'll mix it with water, and they'll put it in a dirt mold. They'll put the brick outside in the sun. It'll dry, and then they stack it up like this, and they'll put logs. See right here? These holes? They'll put logs in these holes right here, and it makes it all hot. It cooks them and turns the bricks to be hard, and they make very good bricks. And they use these bricks to make houses and fences. And
Paula wants to know, did you bring a brick?
what?
Paula wants to know, did you bring a brick?
No. Costs too much money to bring it.
Right, she said the airplane would go down.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that people do here is these are guys that live out in the bush. We were on our way to Lusaka. This is all bush country out here. Village country. They make charcoal. And in some areas in Zambia it's illegal, but they do it anyway. And they try to make a living. We had a guy in our church that was working for the government and was constantly arresting and putting people in jail for illegally making charcoal. But that's one of the ways they can try to support themselves. And what you see a lot of is these guys will be riding down, and see this little thing over here? We saw this down in Lusaka, bought it at a Christian. And this is so true. This is exactly how it is right here. This little guy going down on his bicycle with two big bags of charcoal. Okay? And now downtown, in my town, I go and buy charcoal from this girl. Because most of the cooking in Zambia is not by electricity or an oven or a stove. They have a round, what is it? It's called a brazier, and it's metal and has sides on it. And you can buy them this round, or this round, and they're about this tall on the sides, from this tall to this tall. They stack the charcoal in there, okay? And then they light it, and they put their pan on it. But you know, most people out in the village cannot afford to cook by charcoal. So what they do is they go out and cut down trees and branches, and they'll get 4 bricks. They'll put branches that come in through next to the bricks. They'll make a fire and cook it just with the fire from the wood. Cooking by charcoal is very expensive.
And they asked, how do you make the charcoal? They didn't understand that.
Well, they'll cut down the trees, and if you've ever made it, sometimes they'll dig holes in the ground, stack the charcoal together, cover the top of it, light the bottom, and it burns very slowly. And but these men right here that make that charcoal, that bag of charcoal will sell for about 25,000 kwacha, which is how much money? About $5. And that's a lot of money to a Zambian. Okay? Now, on our farm, one of the things we are doing, being financed by the missionaries, we are raising cattle. There's a company in Zambia called Zambia that will buy all the cattle that we can raise. We're running a herd right now of about 225 cattle. And we're raising these calves, and when they get up to about 500 pounds, they're going to be sold to Zambia. This is the foreman of the ranch right here. His name is Lucky. He's one of my students in the Bible college. This is two of his workers. And I was out hiking around, and I came across these guys. They were grazing. They get these cattle and graze them. That's how they feed them. They graze them. And I just sat down with them and had lunch with them. This is how they grow maize. It's just simply corn. They do something very strange. They let the corn grow on the stalk, and when it matures, they just let it stay on there, and you can come and see it. It gets hard as a rock. That's hard. It can knock you out with it. Okay? See? Very, very hard. And they'll let all the corn grow like that until it's hard. They'll stack it up like they do here, and it gets very dry and very hard. And a lot of times they'll come out, they'll peel the corn off the stalks. I was down at a friend's house, relatives of a friend, and this whole huge corn crib here. They were filling it up, and I was told by a young man that took me down there that they raised a lot of corn. They raised enough and processed enough to make enough money to take care of themselves for a whole year. Several families. This is Milford, our worker, one of our adopted sons. Can you imagine that? Now what he does is he takes these corn cobs with the corn, puts them in a bag, and then he hits them with that pipe, and it knocks the kernels off. Then he takes the kernels and sets them here with his wife, this is Doreen Milford. And then they get all the kernels, bag them up, and then take them down to the mill to get ground. And it comes out like flour. And the major way they cook it is they just put it in a pot, put some water in it, boil it up, and it becomes real sticky, like sticky rice. And that is their main food that they eat. Marriage there is very different than marriage in America, especially village marriage. You actually purchase a wife from her family. You pay a dowry. What I've discovered in going to Zambia, the Zambian law of marriage for village people is you agree with the family for your dowry. When you pay half of the dowry, you can go get your wife. You don't go through a wedding process. You don't go through vows. Okay? And over there, this is where Christianity has really helped in so many countries, not only in Africa, but in Asia and Europe. They have the idea that your wife is owned. Now, we have to teach the Word of God. It's very common in Zambia for men to beat their wives. Why? Because she's my property, I own her, and I can do what I want. And whether we like it or not, women in these climates, in Zambia, especially out in the bush and in the village, they're not regarded very highly. Christianity has changed a lot of that. Okay? And we're thankful for that. This was a couple that we invited to go to their going together. And we went into this, and Marianne and I, the first time we went to their coming together party. They were going to start to live together now. But we didn't know what to do. We went there, and they didn't exchange vows. They didn't have a pastor. Marianne and I say, are they married? And they say, oh yeah, they're married. How they get married? They didn't exchange any vows. Well, it was all arranged by the families. The dowry was paid. And in Zambian law, that's a legal way to be married, culturally. Now, this was a couple. This is a student in the school. He had been married once before. His wife had died. So he was a widower, a young man. And this was a young lady that was in one of our mission churches. This is Arthur and Beatrice. And they asked me if I would go out and pick her up at her house and bring her over to Arthur's house for the coming together party. He had paid the dowry, and they were married. Now, this is a very unusual, rare thing in Zambia. This kind of marriage is only for wealthy people. She came in. This is Rita and Gershom. Gershom is a highly trained technician in computers. He teaches computers in one of the schools there. He takes care of all of our computers. Takes care of my wife's computer. So he's very well trained. But he's also, his family have wealth. She asked me, because of situations in her family, if I would give her away in a church wedding. She had a traditional white dress. This was a church, and she was married before their pastor. That is a very unusual way that people get married. They also are more well-to-do. Now, we had a couple in our church. This is Gloria, and this is Stanley. And we had a coming together party. They were married traditionally. Her dowry was paid by Stanley to the family. And when he was ready, he went and they just started living together. They were married according to custom there. I was exhorting them in a message. And then a very traditional thing that they do when they come together at the coming together party, which is kind of like our reception after the wedding, the couples will give cakes to the in-laws. So here's Stanley giving a cake to Gloria's parents. Here. Marianne made some. Did you make all these cakes?
No.
What?
The ladies made them.
Okay, the ladies made it.
We taught them how to make a cake.
They were taught. They did a great job. And then they did a traditional thing. They ate cake in front of us. And then the thing that's very helpful there is people in the church, they just come the very best they can, and they bring them gifts to try to help them get started. Okay? Sometimes we have fun times there. We had a little place that we found, a little restaurant out south at a resort little place. We took out, Marianne and I went out to Valentine's Day. What?
Go ahead.
Okay. And we went out. One of the strange things out there is you got to wait. We have to wait anywhere from 45 minutes to over an hour to get your food. And then when we got it, the meat and everything was so tough, we haven't gone back there. But the fun time we had there together. This is a famous place down in Livingston called Victoria Falls. And we went down. You have to have umbrellas because there's so much mist coming off the falls that you get sopping wet. This is a big resort in Livingston. Big resort. Because many people come down to South Africa, and they'll fly from Johannesburg, which is where the big airport is. They'll fly back up to Livingston because they want to see Victoria Falls. Victoria Falls is one of the great 7 wonders of the world, like the pyramids of Egypt. And so people come down. This is one of those big resort hotels. And Marianne, these guys were dressed up as Zulus. They all speak excellent English. They go to school, but they dress up in this traditional wear. And Marianne got out there, and they'd love to have pictures taken, and she played the drums with them. Over here, we heard about a great pizza place in Livingston called Flunky Monkeys. And we actually ate really good tasting mozzarella cheese there on the pizzas. And here's Flunky Monkeys. Well, we take time, start to ride a bicycle for exercise. We found a great big Olympian pool down in Osaka when we go down. And for any of you that play golf, well, this was a strange experience for me because when you go to the golf course there, they don't have greens. They have browns. And the browns are made of sand and diesel fuel. It's like pitching into a big sand trap. And you have young men that help carry your bags, and they'll have this rake that has a long piece of pipe about this long, this round. And when your ball lands on the ground, which we would call it green, it's not a green, no grass, they'll make a big path with this tool from where your ball is down to where the hole is, and you put down the path. And that's a very interesting thing. This is a crocodile farm. We lived in an area where we have a very famous hunter and a very famous game man that was in Choma. He's now retired, living up in Livingston. But he also not only controlled elephants in our area from about 1950. He's killed over 300 elephants, but also he was asked by the government at different times to go out and capture man-eating crocodiles. And he captured many of these and built a big farm, a very interesting place to go. This is one of the man-eating crocodiles. A crocodile here, he's 85 years old. He weighs 2,000 pounds. And they're very, very vicious animals.
Question on eating elephants.
Yes.
Can you?
Only if it's done by the government. You kill. A lot of times when Joe would go out and kill an elephant that was raiding, say, a village, when they killed the elephant, then the people would come in and cut the elephant up and they could eat it then. No, but you cannot go out and kill any of those animals today. It's against the law. Now, the first Thanksgiving I ever had in Zambia was in 2007, and we had no turkey. No turkey. And so I said, you know, that I'm going to raise turkeys. And one of our Zambian men came to us and he was talking about our tackies. Our tackies. See tacky? We said, what are you talking about? Tacky. Now, it's hard for Zambians to use the word R because they don't have the letter R in their language. And so finally, after we listened and listened and listened to this young man, we found out that tacky was a turkey. And so I raised these turkeys. Spent almost a whole year raising these turkeys so that in November of 2008, I had these turkeys. And here's my turkey, Morton. And Morton number 2, and my hen. We finished this turkey, we peeled the skin off, and I barbecued him on a big barbecue. And here we had all the missionaries together for Thanksgiving. And we got this turkey. And the strange thing about these turkeys, they don't have any breast meat. So I cleaned that turkey, put all the feathers off, and didn't have any breast meat. I was shocked. And anyway, David, one of the missionaries' kids here, this is Jim's son. This is Jim Smith. This is Dave Smith. He started to eat my turkey drumstick, and it was so tough he couldn't chew it. And so I tried to cut the wings off the next day to go eat it, and it was so tough I couldn't chew it. So you know what I did? I said, no more turkey. All this hard work raising these turkeys for a whole year, and you can't even eat it. So I took the foreman of the ranch, who's one of my students. I said, hey, you want all my turkeys? And I was also raising guinea hens. You know these right here? They are noisy things. They tell them they're real good eating. Guinea hens. I had about 4 guinea hens. And I gave all the guinea hens to the foreman of our ranch, one of my students. I gave all my turkeys. I says, the only thing you have to do is you have to take the entire pen that I have in my backyard, pull it up, the fence post, and you just move it over to your house. He said, I'll do it. And he says, he is so excited. And now, those turkeys he's raised, and now I watch out of my fence and out near his property. It's about 300 yards from my house. And I see about 12 or 15 turkeys walking around. And by the time I get it back, he said he's going to have about 30. And he's so excited because, you know, now my family is going to have meat to eat. And it's going to be turkey meat. Now, I was on a trip down in Masabuka. I saw all these girls. There's a strange thing about ladies in Africa, okay? Now, ladies in Zambia, they have short hair, okay? But all of them wear wigs, especially in town. I don't know what they do out in the villages. But every 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks, they'll change their wig. Be an entirely different wig. Looks like an entirely different person. Okay? And so, I saw this girl working on some ladies down in Masabuga. We were picking up a young man and moving him up to Choma. So I said, well, hey, why don't you put a little hair on mine?